Hi, Lauren. Welcome back to this part of a session. Um, let's just briefly do the introductions again, and then we'll start with the interview questions.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me back for part two. Again, my name is Lauren. I was a former high school and middle school English teacher, and then I pivoted into the tech world and miraculously became a content strategist for Meta.
Awesome. So we just learned about the profession, about the role of a content strategist. Now we will go to the interview processes. So the first question would be, how do you, in general, prepare for the interview? What is your process?
I definitely like to do research about the company. I think that's really, really important to first show, number one, the hiring team that you are invested in this role. And that could be as simple as just like looking at their website, right? Figure out like what is the service they provide, the products they produce, and then really get to understand like what is their mission and goals, and what is their mission and vision statement, and what is the goal of their company, what is the value proposition, and then the more you know about the company, then the more you can speak to how you can contribute to the company during your interview. That's step one for me for preparing for the interview.
What questions do you get asked during the interview when you apply for this role? How do you answer these questions?
Yeah, so the first question is always going to be the typical, like, tell me about yourself interview. I like to give like an elevator pitch. So 30 seconds, I just tell them very briefly what's my background. And I like to keep it pretty clear and concise. And I will tell them like three main points about what it is that I do and how those three main points may carry over into their company. So for instance, when I'm doing interviews right now and they ask me to talk about myself, I tell them about my role as a content strategist for Meta. And I tell them I support the company in three ways. I give product education, I translate complex subject matter into digestible pieces of information for users, and I also supply users with capacity building so they know how to use our platform safely. So I try to keep it very brief, very short, and to the point. And I think telling them upfront, here are the three things that I do, it forces me to limit myself to three important things, and then I deliver it in a short amount of time. Other questions that they'll probably bring up in interviews is very product specific. So they'll ask you to talk about a time where you were a part of a product launch. What was the role that you played? What was the cross-functional role you play, and what was the impact that you had? So whenever I answer this question, I give a specific example. So I'll talk about a specific product that I helped launch for Meta back in August. I'll talk about what I did, and then I'll always end with the impact that I had, whether it was like a product adoption rate, an increase in product use, whatever it may be. That's a very common question, is to talk about a product that you helped launch. Another question might be like, what kind of content have you helped create? So that can be anything from like email campaigns, infographics, social media posts, blogs, newsletters. You want to give a few different examples to show you know how to create different types of content in different formats across different channels. And then from there, you can also, again, end with your impact. So for example, for me, I also worked as a recruitment coordinator for Cal State Fullerton, and I helped recruit for one of their teaching cohorts. And a lot of those efforts started from like a social media account, so an Instagram account. So I will speak to the social media posts that I created for that account and what that entailed. And then I'll end it with the impact, which was a 300% increase in the social media following. So I think that's a really important question that they're going to ask, because again, they just want to see that you know how to make different types of content and you know how to distribute it across different channels. Another question was one that you asked me in part one, which was like, how do you stay like up to date on what's going on when it comes to creating content? So a common question might be like, how do you stay up to date with trends? And again, it's all about just like leveraging internal and external tools you might have, and also doing your own research. And then you can tell a story of how you did that, why you did that, and what was the outcome of it. And I think lastly, another important question that always gets asked is how do you juggle multiple projects at one time? Because as a content strategist, you might be strategizing for more than one audience. So I think that question is just asked that the hiring team can understand, like, how does your brain work? And are you able to work under pressure and juggle multiple things at once and still have your deliverables and meet deadlines? So I'll answer that question very honestly, just talk about my process of like leveraging lists and calendars. And I'm someone who personally, when I work with multiple pieces that are moving at once, I like to see everything that I'm working on. And that's again why I use a calendar and why I use lists. I need to know like what is it that I'm working on, when is it due, who does it need to be delivered to, and they all might have different due dates and different XFN teams, and having it in front of me allows me to prioritize like which one needs to actually get done first. And then having it in front of me also allows me to honestly like take stock and say like, do I need more time with something? Let me go talk to this XFN person first and let them know like, hey, I might need like one more day on this or a few more hours on this.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Have you been asked a question during the interview that has been challenging for you to answer, or you didn't know the answer for this question?
I think not that I didn't know how to answer, but maybe it's just like, oh, I don't want to answer this question because maybe it makes me look unqualified or less qualified. But I think the one question I got asked where I was like, oh, I don't want to have to admit this, was like they asked, it was very specific. A company asked me if I had experience working with like video production as a means of content creation. So I just answered very honestly, and I sort of gave it that like, oh, this is a negative, but with a positive spin. And I just let them know I have some experience when it comes to video production as a means of content creation. While it's not my strong suit, I am still very eager to learn this content format because I see value in creating video content, especially when speaking to audiences that digest information in that way. Luckily for me, working at Meta, I had some experience with it. I helped edit video scripts that were then going into production. So I'm able to speak on that and let the company know like, hey, this isn't in my wheelhouse, but I'm not completely unfamiliar with it. So I think when it comes to being asked interview questions that are difficult or that you don't know the answer to, I think it's just a good rule of thumb to like answer it the best that you can and be transparent and own up to the things you don't know, but frame it as a learning experience that you're willing to take on. Because I think companies definitely want to know that the candidates in front of them are willing to learn. I don't think that as a candidate, you need to know everything, because if you need to know everything at the job you're applying for, it might not be a very exciting role. You should definitely be learning as you go, because that's what, for me at least, is what makes the work really fun.
Yep, that's amazing. And what, for example, if they ask you something that you've never done before, that you've never worked with, but should you just honestly answer like, I've never worked with this, even if you don't know, you have nothing, you have no background?
That's a good question.
Yeah, how do you go about this?
That's such a good question. And I feel like for me personally, I'm just not a good liar. So, and I'm also just like someone who's just like always so anxious about like pigeonholing myself into a situation. Like, I think for me, again, I would do the negative with a positive spin and just tell them like, I am not completely familiar with this. Okay, so for example, if they're talking about like a technical tool that they use, maybe they use something like MailChimp as like their email campaign, booster, which I've never used. I would say like I've never used this specific tool, but I am eager to learn, and I am familiar with other tools that allow for the same thing. Um, so like I am willing to adopt this one if it's going to be beneficial to, accomplishing our goals, something like that.
That's a great answer because during my interview, when I was first starting to look for a job after like my I used to work at a company for 6 years, and then I started looking for a new role, and I was a complete noob in like job interviews and everything. And I remember I was interviewing for Meta, Facebook back then, and they asked me something about dog fooding, and I have no idea like what dog fooding is. And I started talking about apps, dogs, food. It turned out that
No,
this was just like a dog fooding as a slang for like testing.
I know, you know what? And I think it's fair to say that like a lot of these like technical terms and like company jargon, they're not going to be known across the board. So sometimes it might be more of an indication of like the hiring team. Not, I can't blame the hiring team because when you're so immersed in the work, you forget that other people don't know
Exactly.
these terms. And I think as Meta employees, like we did that all the time, like constantly using abbreviations and
Mhm.
acronyms and thinking that like other people know them too. So, and then I think it's again, like honesty is the best policy. If there's something that you don't know, I don't think there's any shame in saying like, hey, I don't know this, but that doesn't mean I'll never know it forever. Like I am a lifelong learner, and that is a strength that I have as an employee is like I'm willing to take things on and learn new skills and learn new softwares and programs. And I'm not going to just like shut down or fake it till I make it. Like I'll actually learn it.
Exactly. Yeah. So whenever you have a challenging question you don't know what people are talking about or asking about, just ask a question.
Yeah, or just be like, oh, I'm not super familiar with that, but I would love I would love the opportunity to learn more.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's
Oh.
like a fluffy answer.
So my next question is, what do you think are the most important points of a content strategy that you should mention, but you haven't been asked? And how do you put that into your pitch?
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, because content strategy can look really different across the board, I have a couple of answers for this. If you're looking into a content strategy role that is copywriting heavy, then the important emphasis you want to make is your ability to like be creative but strategic. So you want to really hone in on that like compelling storytelling, really having the ability to understand the brand's voice and the brand's mission and weaving that into your knowledge of the audience and the relationships you build with them. If you're looking at a content strategy role that's more so content management, then the important point you want to bring up is your project management skills, your ability to juggle multiple projects at once, and your attention to detail and your organization. So you would want to bring up examples of like, well, how do you implement procedures to make sure your projects run smoothly? So that could mean making process documentation, making templates, making calendars, sharing it with all your XFN teams so that there's visibility across the board. So that's a really important point to make if you're looking at a content strategy role that is a little bit more management. I think for all content strategy roles, an important point to make is that you are a results driven person. One of the really important pieces of content strategy that I didn't bring up before is going back to your content and seeing how it performs. You really want to go and see like, how is my content landing? Because if it's not landing with the audience, then not only are you not meeting your goals and serving your audience, you're also not meeting the business goals, which I think might be more important when it comes to like keeping your job. So really positioning yourself as like, I'm a results driven person. I am someone who creates content, not just to create it. I'm someone who creates it so that I can create impact with it. So coming up with an example would be, a great way to show your interviewer that not only can you execute on the content that you're creating, but you're also capable of looking back at it and looking at the data behind it, the insights behind it, and refining the content strategy. I think that is like across the board an important point to emphasize in all of your interviews.
Mm-hmm. And how do you emphasize on the soft skills, like that you are, a part of a team, that you're culture fit?
That's a great question. I think so. It has to do with collaboration and delegation and having an ability to relinquish control and trust that the product teams and the design teams and the marketing teams are masters in their craft as well. So you feel comfortable passing on your work to them and seeing it come to life, but also offering input where it's needed. I think that is like a really easy soft skill to speak to because collaboration is key to content strategy. I can't imagine executing on content strategy without having anyone else involved, because not only is that a lot of work, it's a lot of skills that you might not have. For me personally, I can speak to this. I don't have a lot of background in design, so I might not know aesthetically what looks good with the content that I create. And that's why I'm so fortunate that there is a design team with me. It's why I'm fortunate that I have a marketing team with me who might know the style guides that we need to follow. So just really being open to that is really, really important. So speaking to that in an interview is very, very important. The other soft skill, again, would be like organization and attention to detail. So talking about those content calendars, refining the calendar and updating it to really show that you are organized and care about the work, so much so that you're going to make a calendar to make sure it launches.
What do you think would be the best question that you can ask the interviewer, that shows that you are the best candidate because you have such a great question?
That's a good question, because I feel like I have like a few that I always choose from. I think right now my most favorite one is, what impact could I make within my first 3 months, 6 months, and 9 months to show success in this role?
Mm-hmm.
I think that is a really helpful question, because it tells me what their expectations are, and it lets them know that I am forward thinking and I am goal oriented, because I want to meet these 3 months, 6 months, 9 month goals. And it also tells me, are their expectations achievable? Are they fair? Are they measurable? And then if they are, how can I go about meeting these expectations, and how can I go about and making sure I'm meeting them in a way that they can measure and not just in a way that I can measure?
Awesome. And in the era of AI and chat GPTs and everything, do you think that there is a possibility that content strategy, content writer positions can be no longer existent in the future?
That is a great question. I definitely see and understand maybe some of the anxiety that comes along with like having AI and chat GPT. I think at its stages right now, I don't think that chat GPT or AI could take the place of a content strategist, just because, like I mentioned before, a huge part of content strategy is the relationship building with the audience. And at its current stages, I don't think ChatGPT can really form a bond with an audience and learn about audience behavior in the way that a person can. I more so see ChatGPT and AI as like a tool.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a tool that we should be afraid of. But I think that ChatGPT offers like a really, really great foundation when it comes to copywriting, at least. It provides a great framework and starting off point. And it supplements the work, but it doesn't replace the work. So ChatGPT would be great to use to, again, create a foundation of a piece of written copy. But because I am the human who built the relationship with the audience and fully understands the audience, I can then take this starting off point, reframe it, add to it, edit it, revise it, put my own spin on it so that it's something that will actually deeply resonate with my audience while driving a business or a brand's goals.
Yeah, and I really like the phrase that you use is that you take your audience on a journey with you, and not just, so that takes a human actually to actually do that.
Yeah, for sure. I think that content strategy, there is a very human, personal touch to it. And I think that's what makes it, that's what a successful content strategy looks like. It's one that is humanizing and knows the audience by directly addressing their pain points, directly celebrating their wins and their goals, and like surveying them and just hearing from them. And you need a person for that.
That's for sure. I really appreciate, Lauren. This conversation was amazing. I hope it will help other people to understand the process, the interview process of the content strategist. And please leave us a comment if you have any questions for Lauren. I'll make sure that we address that to her. And also put a like. Thank you so much, Lauren, for taking the time and being on this channel.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me. I hope I was able to shed some light on the world of content strategy and its many complexities and all the interesting, crazy things that go along with it. But content strategy, especially if you're someone with an English background, it's a really, really fun role. And if you like working with humans and building relationships and telling stories, content strategy might be a good path for you.